Democrats had a lot of success in the 2018 midterms, flipping enough Republican-held seats to take back the House majority. But this cycle, they're looking to hold on to that majority and even add a few more districts that are held by vulnerable Republicans. Joining us now is Democratic challenger in one of those districts. Candace Valenzuela is the Democratic nominee in Texas's 24th congressional district, and she joins us now. Candace, great to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to start with your district specifically, the 24th district of Texas, essentially one of those suburbs of Dallas-Fort Worth. President Trump won this district back in 2016, barely 51% of the vote, but Beto O'Rourke had won this in 2018 when he ran for Senate. So what is it about this district that has Democrats thinking that they can win it?
You know, we've had major demographic shifts. Nearly 2 decades ago, Kenny Marchant, who'd held this seat for so long, drew this district while he was at the state ledge. And he thought it would stay the same forever. He'd been sitting in it, not really communicating with anybody, taking lots and lots of money from corporate PACs, so he didn't have to communicate with anybody. And then last cycle, there was a near upset. A candidate who didn't have a lot of funding got within 3 points, but Beto O'Rourke won this district. And that difference was young people of color who were inspired by his message. So we knew that a Democrat could win here, but it couldn't be just anyone. I've represented a fifth of this district already. I defeated an 18-year incumbent with the backing of the Republican establishment to take my seat as the first woman of color on my school board. And now I'm fighting for the same families and then some in this district, because we need representation that understands the struggles that working families are facing right now.
I can only imagine what it was like campaigning in the environment that we're in right now. We've got this pandemic going on. We're also facing racial injustice problems as well. Also, you had a contested primary against a person who has name recognition. The DCCC did not endorse anybody in this race. And of course, the pandemic, the coronavirus happening. How difficult was it to campaign and then eventually win that nomination in this environment?
It was a lot more challenging than we did expected at the onset. I've got to tell you, because we went in knowing that, okay, this is a 7-way primary, the very first part going up to Super Tuesday, and then after Super Tuesday, I thought I could take a breath and then go out and knock on doors. That's my favorite part of the campaigning process, is just interacting with people, and that was dramatically different. There were no doors to knock on. We were all going to stay inside. We were going to stay safe from the coronavirus. We needed a new way to engage. Add to that, I'm the mother of 2 really young sons. At the time, I had a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old. My son's now 5. And so much of my life was built around having that additional childcare, having to be able to do that. And so my husband and I are at home, alternating blocks of work schedules. Our campaign, instead of, again, knocking on doors, we've been making phone calls, we've been shooting texts, we've been having digital town halls on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. We've been reaching voters where they are, which they're largely at home, looking at their phones or looking at their TV screens. And just through throwing myself at this, our whole team throwing ourselves into this process, I think we were able to get to the point where we had a 20-point lead, which no one saw coming on July 14th. And I'm really proud of the work that they've done to get us here.
Candace, your race, a lot of people think you have a really good chance of winning this race, and your story is really quite remarkable. I believe I've read you used to be homeless at one particular point. Also, if you're elected, you would be the first Afro-Latina elected to Congress as well. What is it about your story that resonates with so many people right now?
It's the quintessential American story, right? It's the story of families fighting for the ability to put a roof over their heads, put food on the table, to see their children succeed because they have access to the education they need. When I was young, very, very young, actually around the same age as my kids now, we left a violent situation, my mother, brother, and I, and we were homeless, bouncing around from place to place. We lived in a homeless shelter. We lived on relatives' couches. And one of the worst points, we lived in a kiddie pool outside of a gas station in Texas. But we were able to get things together through some key programs, housing through HUD. We got food stamps, and public schools became a source of stability, a source of home, a source of social mobility for my brother and I. And those opportunities are those that I'm fighting for every Texan, for every American. And when I started this process, I wasn't thinking I will be the first ever Black Latina to ever represent any congressional district in the country. That wasn't what I was thinking at all. And the fact that I'm a first in 2020, it just speaks to the fact that we've been lacking representation in so many different ways. And I'm really excited to represent a lot of those voices that haven't been heard, especially voices right now that are suffering disproportionately from COVID-19. They don't have the access to the healthcare they need. They don't have access to the food or the housing that they need. And I've experienced that lack in my life,
Right.
and I'm bringing that to bear on my governance.
Candace, we got to leave it there. Obviously, your race is going to be one we're going to continue to watch. Candace Valenzuela is the Democratic nominee for Texas's 24th congressional district. Great to have you here.